Good morning. My name is Charlie Evenhouse, and my wife and I, Heather, have been members here for over 33 years. And we just totally cherish our family here and his faithfulness in my life. And I want to start by reading this. God's providence was evident in the generations before me. God's providence means God lovingly guides, provides for, and governs everything in life according to his purposes. And the following family story told me at a young age positively impacted my spiritual life. My maternal great-grandfather immigrated from the Netherlands, and he started a garbage business in Chicago. And he had a family, had 7 children, and during this time he had a severe illness, and he was unable to work. And so he talked to a fellow garbage man down the street if he would buy his business so that he could pay his medical bills. And at that time, the gentleman said, "Hey, don't worry about it. I'll take care of your route, and when you're recovered, then you can pay me back." And so for a year, my grandfather tended to his health, and when he was able to go back to work, he took over his business again. And every week, he would write on Sunday a check, and he called it the love check. And he would give it to one of his kids and rotate it to run down the street to pay the man that took care of his business, that he could get healthy and pay his bills during that time. And so God had provided for his family. And during that time, his children saw that. And one of those children was my grandfather, and he was also a believer in Jesus. And so during that time, he had a heart for people that weren't saved. And so he would share with his customers and with people he'd meet the Lord. He actually had a book that was written in Dutch that had the salvation message that he really liked. And so he had paid to have it translated, and he could hand that out to people. Then as years go by, my grandfather ended up in a nursing home. And he had Parkinson's disease. He wasn't able to walk, and his speech was impacted. And it was near to where I was going to school in college, and so I'd go visit him. And there's a couple things that happened that stood out to me. One was that my grandfather had a heart for his family. He was a man of prayer. And so he had a sheet next to his bed that had the list of the names of all of his children, the 7 children, their spouses, and all the grandchildren. And every day he would take that sheet because he did not want to miss anyone, run his finger down, and he prayed for every one of the family members on a daily basis. And that had an impact on me. And then he asked me during one of the visits if I would go visit with the people in the home there, because he knew a lot of them weren't saved. But he wasn't able to communicate and talk with them anymore. And so my roommate from college, Dan, and I would go and we would visit people. And we'd try to share the gospel with them, and we'd pray with them. And that was just a time of growth in my life, and it had a positive impact on me at that time. Well, then I'm going to move on to my immediate family. My dad was raised in a Christian home. And so when he went to college, he met my mom, and she was raised in a Christian home, and they got married. But my mom they hadn't made the Lord Lord of her life at that time. And so it wasn't until I was a younger child that my mom got saved. And at that time, it just transformed her life. And she completely became a woman of faith, and she would share the Lord with others. She would witness to people, and the Lord just used her to lead people to get saved. And so I was able to see this in my family. And so for me, I can't tell you the time or the place that I got saved, but as a young child, I heard the gospel from my parents, from Sunday school, from other people around me, and I accepted the Lord at some point as a young child and started my walk with the Lord. And as life started on, I saw how the Lord just kind of was there through different times growing up. And one time my dad had a major seizure, and he wasn't able to work for a year. And just to see how God was faithful in our family and walking through that time. Then as time went on in high school, I started to saw a gal, asked her on a date, and started dating her. And the more I got to know her, as time went on, your heart gets pulled in that relationship, but realized that she wasn't saved, that she didn't have the Lord the center of her life. And so I realized that in not being able to walk and pray and talk about the Lord with her, not what God wanted. He wants you to be able to have that relationship together with your spouse. And so after I started college, I ended up breaking up with her and prayed that God would just provide me with a woman that would share my values and had a walk with the Lord. And that's when God provided my wife, Heather. And so we met, we got married, and then began our journey together. I'm going to share some of the things that, basically some of the challenges, I guess, over 36 years of marriage that we've kind of had the Lord walk with us through. And I'll condense that down to a couple things here. And one was, after 7 years of being married, unable to have children, we ended up going down the path of IVF. And so that opened a whole world to us that most people don't see that, what goes on when you pull the curtain back. We ended up interviewing different doctors and found out that they would grade the embryos that were created, and they give them labels of A, B, C, D, and that they would take the C's and D's and they would discard them. And since Heather and I believe that life starts at conception, that was unacceptable to us. And so we started praying to find a doctor that had the same values as us. And we ended up being led to interview Dr. Halverson in Milwaukee, who was a Christian and had incorporated those values into her practice. And she never would discard any embryos. And so we started the journey with her. And so we ended up going to our appointment, ended up finding out that we broke a record for her clinic. At that time, the results were 28 embryos that were created. And I remember the appointment just kind of being in shock of that we had the possibility to have 28 babies. And so at that point in time, it was like, okay, Lord, we had to turn that over to the Lord on a daily basis. And that we were going to pursue this and have as many children as God wanted to provide us with. And so over the course of 10 years, we ended up having 6 children, 5 boys and 1 girl that God's blessed us with. For us, because that curtain's been pulled back, we know that one day we're going to get to heaven. We're going to meet our other 22 children. So then I'm going to move on to another challenge that happened in life for me. A few years later, I ended up having high blood pressure, didn't realize it. And at the same time, I was probably struggling with depression as a result of that. And a major life event was just around the corner, unbeknownst to me. And it was on a Palm Sunday, 20 years ago, here in this building, back in the Sunday school rooms. And we had a pizza party. I was in the back room with the people. And all at once, I felt like I had a stabbing pain, just like 2 knives stabbed me in my back. And it was excruciating painful. And I remember walking out of that room. I didn't know what was going on, and I knew something was not right. And one of the first people I ran into by God's providence was Lori Goff, Pastor Rick's wife, who works in the ER at Howard Young. And so I explained to her what was going on. She wisely got me escorted to the ER here in town. And so that started the process of the doctors trying to figure what was going on. They couldn't figure it out. They decided, well, we could send you home or we could run one more test. And it was like, run one more test, check it off on your sheet if everything's okay, because something's not right. And never forget the day he walked into from doing a CAT scan on me and found out, and he says, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news, we know what's wrong with you. The bad news is this is what's wrong with you. You have an aortic dissection. That means the inner lining of my artery from the top of my chest down to an inch from my kidneys, the blood had gotten in through the layers and ripped it all out and deposited all the shredded layers of my artery into my kidneys. And so thus began the journey. They put me on a flight to life to Wausau. And on the flight, I remember praying specifically to the Lord that he would take care of my family if he was to call me home. But I asked, Lord, I'd rather be alive and I want to raise my family. If you could so just let me do that, I'm turning this over to you. So I turned it over to the Lord. I got to Wausau. They decided to put me in a coma. They didn't know if I was going to live day by day. And at that point, people from all over the country were praying for me. And I'm told that most people with this condition I have do not survive. And so a week later, on Easter morning, 20 years ago from today, they brought me out of the coma, and I had survived. And so thus began a long journey to recovery for myself. Then I just want to move on to a few years later. I had another life event. My job was eliminated at work, and I had to come home, and I was unemployed. But I had in my heart that God, He was with me. He's walked with me through tough times and good times. And so I sat my family down and my children and said, hey guys, today I lost my job. But you know what? Don't worry. God's got us covered. And we're going to pray about it. And so we prayed as a family. And God provided, in very short order, a job for me. And so I looked again at God's providence and allowed us to stay here and in this community that we loved and continue on raising our family and our church here. And we're so thankful for that. I want to give God the glory for being providential in the lives generationally before me and in my own life. My prayer is God will continue to reign in the hearts and lives of my children, their spouses and grandchildren, and generations to follow. I thank God for bringing our faith-free family and friends into my family's life, and to encourage, pray, live life with, and outright have a good time with. Our God is bigger than any situation we find ourselves in, and He wants us to turn them over to Him in prayer, and He will walk with me and He'll walk with you through both the good times and the bad times. And God bless you on this Easter Sunday morning. Thank you.